Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Monday, December 2nd, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Alright, guys, well, we're going to continue looking into the quote unquote giants or large hominids, as I like to call them, state by state. And in this video, we're going to look at West Virginia. And again, what's so fascinating to me are the details in some of these accounts. And of course, you have to think of it this way too, guys. Look, no comprehensive study was ever done on these things, and probably because so many of these things were destroyed, number one. Number two, all these things were unearthed in the past, it seems, in copious amounts, apparently, and just were lost and forgotten about, went into the basements of universities and then disappeared, and all of these things got disappeared and everything else. So you know who's done a comprehensive study, but what we've learned from these accounts so far is a lot of things. We've learned that the mounds are really for several different kinds of things, different types of burials, often for dignitaries or people of authority, the chief, etc. And then you have the sort of general burials where it seems that everybody who lived in these communities went into that particular mound. And then you have battles, evidently the dead from battlefields all buried in mounds, and could also be secondary burials in a lot of these mounds as well. When they find skeletons of rather, average height, what we might consider average height, although being taller than the people of average height in the past. But, the people that lived in the areas, native peoples, perhaps another ancestor of the Native Americans, because it went through several phases. We know that from the Paleo Indians and the Woodland period, and these are all the prehistoric periods before the Native American people. So there were more than several, upper woodland, lower woodland, all this stuff. So you have to take that into consideration. There's lots of things to take into consideration. There's lots of things to understand. Some of these apparent skeletons weren't buried in mass. They were buried in vaults, tombs, sarcophaguses, stone or wood, bark, different types, red ochre, charcoal, they're evidently burning. There's lots of things to know about this. The artifacts found, these things, when you're hearing about certain artifacts found in several different archaeological sites and accounts, then you start to get a picture here that evidently this is from maybe the same civilization. What are these things, whatever it is. So we're going to hear about that in this, because I can relate it because I read all of the accounts. I wish I could read all the accounts to you. It'd take forever. And West Virginia has, it's got quite a few. So let's take a look at the first account here in West Virginia, because it's got quite a few. And West Virginia was one of the places I think that Jefferson went to unearth mounds, etc. So, and study the Indians and whatnot. Average skeleton, 7 feet, Preston County, West Virginia. At the Sandy Creek Mound in Preston, West Virginia, several skulls were excavated from this mound. After trying to retrieve one of the skulls and failing as the crumbled away at the touch, one was secured. All of the skulls had a peculiar 1 inch by 1/2 inch bone where the sutures meet. All of them possessed this peculiar feature. Isn't that interesting? Another kind of strange skull type. From all the different types. And don't forget, guys, there were also small people here, too. From Cabeza de Vaca's accounts, he met, short prehistoric people as well, besides meeting, extremely tall people who attacked them in Florida. So Damaka was, talking about little Stone Age guys too, and who knows? Even like the, what we would consider the, fairy people or dwarves or whatever. We have accounts of that here too. And the fact that all the Native American languages are all different from each other and orphan languages, not like Indo-European languages all related to each other, more like the Basques who are, have their own orphan languages there. Well, all of the Native Americans, in many, many cases had languages they couldn't understand each other, live right next to each other. It makes you think of, the Tower of Babel. It just does, maybe Tower of Babel is just, euphemism for the Americas where all these people spoke all these different languages and, there was, goes far back, not the new world, just as old as the old world. There's just no trace of it because it got destroyed, like Randall Carlson will discuss. So they're crumbling away to dust. So the skulls were long and narrow, long faces and low foreheads. Okay, so you have the people who are like, well, these were Vikings and blah blah blah. Were they Vikings? They don't sound like Vikings to me. Long and narrow, long faces and low foreheads. This sounds like some sort of strange humanoid creature. Again, look, we gotta look at these guys and say, oh my God, what a ugly mofo. And they probably were, and, but not to them, see? So that's the way you gotta look at it. We didn't like them. We don't like any strange people, whether they be little or big, or we didn't like any of that, so we got rid of most of the pygmies and all these tall people. Because we don't like any of that stuff. We don't. Our kids are getting scared and our wives and whatnot, and we say, well, we got to get rid of these people everywhere on this planet. We did that because we're savages. A skeleton was found at Tioga Point of the Murray Farm outside the city limits southwest of the town of Save. In a mound there, the bones of 68 were buried there. It is estimated to have happened about 1200 AD. Bing, 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 bing. When, apparently all these catastrophes were happening up and down the East Coast, according to Charles C. Mann's book. Oh boy, I wonder what they were. The average size of these 68 skeletons was about 7 feet in length, with many of these individuals much taller. Many of the skulls possess horn buds, quote unquote. Horn buds. Horns that had been there from birth. Okay, no, it was cranial deformation for horns? How are they doing that with boards? I don't know. Let me go back to school. So horns have been there since birth, which were located 2 inches above the forehead. Ooh, scary looking guys. The excavator of the skeletons were Professor A.B. Skinner from the American Investigating Museum, Professor W.K. Moorhead from the Phillips Andover Academy, and I think W.K. Moorhead went to go work for the Smithsonian. Dr. G.P. Donahue, church dignitary and Pennsylvania state historian. It seems that these skeletons were sent to the American Investigating Museum, and the museum does not admit to having them or their existence. Yay! Bury the past, folks, I'm telling you. It's a psyop. Why? The past isn't what they tell us it is. Something else. Something scary. A 7-foot skeleton in Charleston, West Virginia. Giant remains in a mound. From the Charleston, West Virginia, Professor Norris, the ethnologist who has been examining mounds in a section of West Virginia for several months, the other day opened the big mound on Colonel B.H. Smith's farm, 6 or 8 miles below here. This is the largest mound in the valley, proved a rich storehouse. The mound is 50 feet high, pretty big, and they dug down to the bottom. It was evidently the burial place of a noted chief who had been interred with unusual honors. At the bottom, they found the bones of a human being measuring 7 feet in length and 19 inches across the shoulders. He was lying flat, and at either side, lying at an angle of about 45 degrees, with their feet pointed toward their chief, were other men. On one side, 2, and the other 3. At the head of the chief lay another man, with his hands extended before him and bearing 2 bracelets of copper. On each side of the chief's wrists were 6 copper bracelets, while a looking glass of mica lay at his shoulder, and a gorget of copper rested on his breast. Or gorget. It's just stone. It's just, well, we often find it as stone, not often copper. And it seems like a bar or something like that. It's very strange. But in any case, on each side of the chief's wrist were 6 copper bracelets. Okay, so 4 copper bracelets were under his head with an arrow in the center. A house 12 feet in diameter and 10 feet high with a ridgepole 1 foot in diameter had been erected over them, and the whole covered by the dirt that formed the mound. Each of the men buried there had been enclosed in a bark coffin. Okay, so bark coffins, the burial seems like a very ceremonial burial there in this particular mound, with a whole structure actually being built there with these men positioned in certain ways, the copper implements, large bones, looked at by, whomever here of authority. So, and this is from the New York Times, 1883. So, again, it's very interesting. The copper bracelets must have been of unusual size themselves. It would have been interesting to know. And again, copper, probably very fine copper artifacts they often find are very fine. Skeleton 6'7" to 7'6". Mound builders had peculiar heads. Wheeling, West Virginia. Special Professor E.L. Lively and J.L. Williamson of Friendly have made an examination of the giant skeletons found by children playing near the town. The femur and vertebrae were found to be in remarkable state of preservation and showed the persons to be of enormous stature. The skeleton ranged in height from 7 feet 6 inches down to 6 feet 7 inches. The skulls found are of peculiar formation. The forehead is low and slopes back gradually, while the back part of the head is very prominent, much more so than the skulls of people living at the present day. The legs are exceedingly long and the bones are unusually large. The finding of the skeletons has created a great deal of interest and general impression that the bones are the remains of people who built the mounds, the largest in the country being located at Moundsville, Marshall County. The Afro-American, December 5th, 1908. All right, so, again, unusually shaped skulls. So, if you're trying to say these are Europeans or whatever it is, okay, so I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe like the Beaker people, if you're talking about European people, because that's the only peoples I can relate to it in Europe. All right, but apparently these people with these style skulls and skeletons are all over the world, and they just have the dating all wrong. And I think one of these articles demonstrates that. I hope I get to that one. Beach bottom giant human skeleton. Beach bottom giant human skeleton. They were giants, from the Philadelphia Public Ledger. Discovery of a giant human skeleton in a man at Beach Bottom, West Virginia, by a group of University of Pennsylvania scientists is of more than passing importance. For the skeleton, besides being surrounded by jewelry and stone implements and what must have been woven coverings, was buried with copper and bronze coins having undeciphered inscriptions. Now, this is like the 3rd, 4th account I've read about these coins, okay? So has any analysis ever been done of these coins? what are these inscriptions on them? Are they of different denominations, or were they numismatic coins that they used for trade or barter? I mean, what about these coins? And I mean, it's the fact that they are coins, whatever kind of coins, as say they're votive coins or something like that, but that's extremely high intelligence. And if it represents something, just as much as any sort of numismatic value coins, although numismatic value coins would have a whole completely different story to it. But has an analysis ever been done of these things? So, this is like the third or fourth time reading about coins, copper and bronze coins with inscriptions on them. What the hell were they? Anybody ever get to the bottom of it? Nope, buried. And you'll often read in these accounts where the Smithsonian followed up on these things and is the last to be seen or heard about any of these things. The mounds of the Ohio Valley have been one of ancient America's unsolved mysteries. Who the mound builders were, whence they came, and why they vanished constitute a hidden chapter of the past. It is always known that they had a civilization high in many respects, but the discovery of coins in a beach bottom grave is believed to be the first proof of anything resembling a monetary system among them. The size of the skeleton, which was that of a man about 8 feet in height, is interesting but not essentially significant. Primitive peoples have always worshipped physical perfection. A giant man could easily achieve leadership which would justify such burial luxury as that found at beach bottom. But even 7-footers are not all common today, and the existence of an 8-footer is new in the recorded knowledge of these mysterious early Americans. Only close examination can determine whence such people probably came, from the east or the west, from Europe or Asia. Meanwhile, it is interesting to know that giants who even coined money, lived in the distant past that knew the cryptic mounds of the upper Ohio. Okay, so here you see at that time, the New World bias over here, whether they came from Europe or Asia. So it's either Asia or Europe. That's your choices. There could have been nobody here. Okay, but see, guys, that's old news. Okay, forget about that. They're wrong about that. There's people already here and a completely different story. And they keep finding evidence of civilization that go even back past the Bering Strait myth dating ages. So, beyond 32,000 years. And since they came out with that thing, they've had to revise it, I don't know how many times already. All right. So just keep that in mind. All right. I go through the whole Bering Strait myth in, on my channel in one of my videos, if you haven't seen it. Okay, because it's just another theory, another bullshit story, so that, it just makes all their dots fit nicely. Skeleton of a giant in Romney, Indian relics in West Virginia, interesting discoveries by a representative of the Smithsonian. And they show this Asian Smith here, the guy who runs this website here, Ancient Humans here. Okay, so the Romney, West Virginia correspondent of the Baltimore Sun says there has been a great deal of excitement here for several days over the discovery of Indian relics and remains by Mr. Warren K. Moorhead of the Smithsonian Institution. I knew there was a Moorhead involved with the Smithsonian Institution. He was sent here on the strength of a letter in the Sun stating that the recent floods in the South Branch of the Potomac had unearthed a great many skeletons. On Wednesday, Mr. Moorhead made a tour of inspection up the river, and the signs seemed very favorable. He procured a number of men the next day and dug several holes on Pancakes Island, about 10 miles above this place. The result of the digging was the finding of several skeletons, pipe, bone beads, panther teeth worked up in the shape of ornaments, pottery, and copper plates, besides the skeleton of an immense buffalo buried in a bed of ashes about 6 feet deep. So I'm very interested. Why would they even comment on an immense buffalo? Because buffalo were pretty big to begin with. But when were buffalo immense? Well, they were immense in the Pleistocene and possibly the early Holocene. So, and these are the kind of things you have to know about when you run into these things, okay? Okay, so Friday the party went down to the Hanging Rocks about 4 miles below here, while according to Kirchhoff's History of the Valley, a furious battle was fought between the Delawares. Here they dug along the riverbank on Mr. Harriot's farm. 11 skeletons were found inside a space of 20 feet. Okay, so an immense buffalo, and I'm just, you got to look at these things, guys. So, American bison, what about the American bison? But just look at this here and get to it here. Okay, so bison latifrons, giant bison or longhorn bison, is thought to have evolved in the mid-continent North America from B. priscus after the steppe bison crossed into North America. So they say that, okay, but giant bison latifrons appeared in a fossil record about 500,000 years ago. B. latifrons was the many species of North American megafauna which became extinct during the Quaternary extinction event. It is thought to have disappeared some 21,000 to 30,000 years ago during the late Wisconsin glaciation. Okay, so 21 to 30,000 years ago. The B. latifrons species was replaced by the smaller Bison antiquus. Antiquus. B. antiquus appeared in North American fossil record approximately 250,000 years ago. B. antiquus in turn evolved into B. occidentalis, then into yet smaller B. bison, the modern American bison, some 5 to 10,000 years ago. Some researchers consider B. occidentalis to be a subspecies of B. antiquus. But it's interesting to me why one species would go extinct during this event and a smaller species would survive, or a less hardy species. Okay, maybe only a little bit to eat, but it doesn't make sense. Smaller means more in number. So I don't know about this, but when they mentioned the large bison there, I can only think of these large bison of the ancient past. And, here you see numbers of 11,000 years ago, 4 to 8,000 years ago, 21,000 to 30,000 years ago. So, who knows? They're not dating the mounts right anyway. Okay. Let's see. Brownton, 14 feet high. If I run out of time, guys, I'm sorry about it. I get to as many as I can. I just thought some of those were very interesting, but a couple more maybe. Bryan Times, April 13, 1899. Giant skeleton. In Browntown, West Virginia, April 5th. A remarkable discovery was made by Harry Berry, a teamster near the wharf landing. The recent flood had washed away a portion of the bank. At that point,